Have you been affected by emotional incest? Yes, emotional incest. Now, before you tune me out, I know that's a strong word. Anytime we hear the word incest, right? Well, obviously, we know what incest means. Inappropriate, typically it means an inappropriate kind of sexual relationship within the family. But that's not how I'm using it here. Emotional incest, yes, but it's emotional incest. And incest is a emotionally inappropriate relationship within the family. And the reason I'm asking this question, have you been affected by emotional incest? It's because I'm making a strong assumption that if you're watching this video, the answer is yes to that question. Because the vast majority of people have been affected, and it is trauma. We may not always see it as trauma because it's emotional and energetic in nature, but it is trauma, and it does lead to trauma in our lives if we've experienced emotional incest. And in today's video, I'm going to give you 3 key indicators that are going to show you if you've been the victim of emotional incest. And it's really important that you begin to get clear about what this is and then actually how to address the roots of it. Hi, welcome back to this video. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Jamal Javanji. I'm a life coach by profession. I am the founder and CEO of a coaching company called Free to Love Coaching Solutions, LLC. I'm the author of the Amazon best-selling book called Living for a Living. And I'm really glad you're tuning in for this episode. This is a super important episode. If you want to move forward in your life, if you want to heal, more importantly, if you're a parent and you want your children to not repeat the patterns that you went through, you really need to tune in and listen. This is super important. But even if you're just somebody who's on a journey of wholeness and well-being, you want to up-level your life, you want to move forward in life, you want to not be stuck, this video is for you. Emotional incest, and I know that's a strong term, emotional incest is the most common form of family trauma that most of us experience, okay? And it is trauma. It is absolutely trauma. And it's not enough to just know about this. We have to understand the roots of it, and we have to know what to do about it, okay? And we're gonna talk about that in this video here. So I'm just gonna get right into it, okay? I wanna talk, let's set the stage, right? It's really important that we know what is normal. Because I'll be completely honest, emotional incest is so common that we don't even know it's abnormal. A lot of people don't even know it's abnormal. We just get used to it. It's normal for us. We grew up in it. We think it's normal. It is absolutely not normal, and it is devastating to our system when we experience it, especially in a parent-child dynamic, okay? So, what's normal? Let's use nature, right? Let's use nature to kind of get into it, right? If you've seen an apple tree, right? Let's just use an apple tree. What happens, right? You plant the apple seed is planted in the ground. It grows up, it becomes a tree. And then that tree, when it's mature, it eventually produces fruit. And the fruit are apples, right? Obviously. So these apples are they see them on the branches. They kind of hang towards the edges of the branches oftentimes. And the apples are quote unquote the offspring or the fruit of the tree itself. And so all the nutrients from the ground, they come up through the roots, they go up through the trunk of the tree, they go out through the branches, and they get deposited on the apples themselves, right? So, and then what happens to the apple? The apple falls off the tree, goes into the ground, falls on the ground, eventually seeds inside the apple make their way into the ground to form new apple trees, okay? That's how it works. You already know this, I'm not saying anything new, but this is normal. This is how nature has designed life to work. So guess what? When we have children, children are the fruit of who we are. They're our fruit, so to speak, if you want to use that analogy. And in a healthy dynamic, what happens? Right. We, as the trees, so to speak, are designed to pour life into our apples, which are our children. We support them, we love them, we care for them, we embody life for them, all these things, right? All the energy in life, it's designed to go one way. The energy is designed to go one way. Energy is designed to flow through us and to be an overflow into the children, into the fruit, so to speak, right? In an apple tree, going back to nature for a moment, in an apple tree, you will never see a tree pulling nutrients or life out of the apple to take back into the tree. Let's say the tree is feeling thirsty or hungry one day, right? It doesn't suck life out of the apple. It's not how it works. All the resources from the tree go into the apple. It's a one-way relationship. It goes into the apple. That's the way it's designed. Well, in the same way, nature, the way it's supposed to work, the way it needs to work, when children come into this world, when our children come into this world, they need everything. They need presence, they need love, they need obviously all the physical needs, need to be fed, need to be changed, need to be protected, need to be housed, all of those things. Our children need everything from us. It's designed, but then as they grow and they mature, right, even emotionally speaking, or in so many ways, it's designed that our life force energy, everything that we are, goes into the children. What's not natural is when we require energy, life from the children to go back to us. It's never natural. That's actually an inappropriate relationship. And many folks have coined this. A mentor of mine many years ago coined this term, emotional incest, or energetic incest. Emotional or energetic incest. It happens when there is something unsettled in the parent, and the parent begins to look to the child to meet some need. It could be presence, it could be a sense of love, a sense of connection, it could be a sense of control. You know, maybe a parent feels like they don't have any control, so they try to get that sense of being empowered and controlled through controlling the child, whatever it may be, okay? It's emotional incest is when the parent is then extracting life, kind of like a vampire, kind of like a leech, kind of like a parasite, extracting something from the child to get a need met in the parent. Okay, it's often unconscious. Parents don't know they're doing it. It is by and large the number one cause of most people's trauma in life. And we don't look at it as trauma because it's so normal, right? Because a lot of parents have never done inner work. They've never done the deep work to heal themselves. So what happens is they get into the relationships with their own children, and they repeat patterns that were passed down to them, which many times their parents, our parents did it to us. We pass it on to our children, if that makes sense. So here are 3 characteristics that are going to really help you see, have you experienced emotional incest? A major characteristic of someone who has experienced emotional incest is this. Oftentimes, you have a profound feeling of not being safe. You don't feel safe. You don't feel settled in your system. It always feels like there's some shoe about to drop. There's some calamity around the corner. Your nervous system is always on edge. You feel anxious. So if you struggle with anxiety or these feelings of anxiety, it may or may not make any logical sense, chances are you grew up in a family, you grew up with parents that were unsettled themselves. For example, and this is a pretty amazing fact to be aware of, when a child is in the room with a parent or an adult, for that matter, whoever the primary caregiver is in that room, a child's nervous system, their breathing pattern, their heart rate, they've done some tremendous studies that will actually show that if a child is in the room with the parent long enough, their heart rate and their breathing pattern and their nervous system will sync with that of the parent or the caregiver. Let that sink in for a minute. That is how powerful an adult's presence is in the life of a child. Their breathing pattern, their nervous system, their heart rate will literally sync up with that caregiver. So this means, right, if a parent is stressed out, anxious themselves, in a dysregulated state, it will cause anxiety in your children by default. If children who are living with dysregulated parents, the child oftentimes will try to regulate the parent. So the relationship becomes inappropriate. The child then becomes a parent in some ways, trying to appease. Now, this can look a lot of different ways, right? So there's always rules of the game. For some families, you have to appease a parent. Maybe a parent gets angry very easy. Maybe a parent flies off the handle very easy. So then the child has to learn the rules of that parent and try to appease the parent that way. Maybe the parent is more emotionally, sad, depressed. A child may take on the role of a caregiver to try to comfort, to soothe that parent. If that's happening, that is emotional incest, because the relationship has been inverted. Instead of the parent soothing the child, pouring energy and life into the child, that child then has to pour it back into the parents, and then the relationship becomes inappropriate, and that child then is actually missing that sustenance, that growth, that comfort, that love, whatever it is that they need. That child is missing that. So it means they are not developing the way they need to. And oftentimes they're emotionally stunted in some way, shape, or form, and trauma is a result of that. If that's you, if you grew up in a home where you had to be the soother, the fixer, the provider, if you had to jump through hoops to keep a parent in a regulated state, you probably experience massive anxiety. I've worked with a ton of people that have this very issue, okay? Second characteristic or pattern that a lot of people have who experienced emotional incest in a home is this. You have tremendous shame. You have tremendous shame. When you grew up with a parent who felt themselves dysregulated, or maybe they felt like they were operating from a place of not enough, a sense of lack, they probably became very critical. And a parent who is very critical to children, right, is projecting onto them their own self-shame. But as a result, they're trying to fix the child. So if you're a critical parent, or you had a critical parent, oftentimes what that means is your parent was trying to work out their own sense of inadequacy in the child. They wanted you to perform. They had high standards for you. They wanted you to get all the, maybe they wanted you to get all A's. They wanted you to excel in all the sports. They wanted you to be the top of your class. And it seems really benevolent. It seems like they just want the best for me, but it's very tricky. A lot of times, it's just the parent who's working out their own sense of failure, their own sense of inadequacy, and they're projecting that onto their children, wanting that child to excel, to get to be the quarterback of the football team, to get all A's, to be the prom king or queen, whatever it may be, right? They want their child to do what they couldn't do, and then they can feel proud or feel good about their kids. But it's often a way to extract from that child the quote unquote adequacy or perfection that they felt like they weren't able to hit themselves. And it is emotional incest. And that produces in the child a deep sense of shame, because that child feels that no matter what they do, it's never quite good enough. You may experience a sense of being completely cut off from your desire. Because remember, when you live in a house where you feel like nothing is quite good enough, your psyche, your nervous system is trying to survive in that environment. So you're typically just looking, what are the things I need to do to survive, to make it through, to get through this childhood, to get through this, to make sure that my caregivers are satisfied with me. What do I need to do? So you're always looking for, what do my parents want? What does somebody else want for me? You're never really asking, what do I want for myself? Which means you're not in touch with your desire. And when you experience high degrees of shame in your life, you are cut off from your own desire. And the way this manifests when you grow up and you have your own family and you move on with your life, you're cut off from your own sense of desire, which affects your sexual life. It affects your emotional life. I've talked to so many folks in my work as a life coach, and I can tell really quickly when someone is afflicted with shame because they have a hard time articulating or getting conscious of what they want in life. A lot of those folks feel like they're not even deserving of even asking that question and getting clear about what is it they want, because they've lived so long with trying to please so many other people, okay? Physically speaking, some of the energetic, because again, and this is, I've talked about this in a different video, but there is an energy component to this. And so when the energy of shame affects you in a certain part of your body where your reproductive organs are, where your digestive tract are. So a lot of folks who struggle with shame also have irritable bowel syndrome. They're irregular in their bowels. A lot of those folks have a lot of problems sexually with their sexual organs, a lot of pain in menstruation, pain with ovulation. Maybe they have irregular periods. Maybe the cycles are very erratic. A lot of those folks struggle with sexual desire because, again, when your desire is suppressed, that energy becomes very dormant. A lot of folks have UTIs that struggle with shame. I know these things may seem really, if this is the first time you're hearing this, you may think these are very unrelated subjects, but they go together. Because again, everything is energy, and energy resides in certain points along our body, and shame resides in the lower region below your belly button, a couple of inches below, and it affects that entire area. That's why it affects libido, affects your digestive tract, affects, a lot of folks get UTIs and even appendicitis. Higher rates of appendicitis, higher rates of UTIs, higher rates of sexual dysfunction in folks who struggle with shame. The third characteristic of folks who have experienced emotional incest is this: you become a social conformist. That means you have a hard time deviating from social norms. And this really piggybacks on the second characteristic we talked about, right? Because when you deal with shame a lot, the last thing you want to do is deviate or be different than the masses or the crowds around you or your own social circle or your family, because it doesn't take a lot for you to make you feel ashamed. So what do you do when you feel a lot of shame? Yeah, you conform to the people around you so that you don't have to feel that deep sense of inadequacy or shame. So social conformity, people pleasing, all of these go, right? These are all indicators that you've experienced emotional incest, okay? This is what happens when we are not shown up for, witnessed correctly, and poured into from our caregivers. These are the three most common characteristics of folks who deal with emotional incest, okay? Feelings of unsafe, which leads to anxiety. Feelings of shame, which means a cutoff from your own desire. And social conformity, which means you lose your authentic voice and cannot distinguish yourself or stand out in a crowd. And this can hold you back in so many ways. Maybe there's something you're here to do. There's some role you need to stand, maybe there's some work you need to do in the world. There's a role you need to take in the world. And if you're afraid of deviating from the social norms, you won't be able to find your voice and to play your unique role in this life. It's super important that we begin to identify what has afflicted us. That's why this video exists. But it's not only enough to just know about this. You actually have to treat it at the root level. Just awareness alone will not fix the problem. We actually have to heal the roots. And one of the major ways that we heal the roots of emotional incest is through the regulation of the nervous system. And this is easier said than done. It's a process. It takes time, consistent effort, and a high degree of intention to regulate your nervous system. My one-to-one coaching program called the Energy Acquisition System, we create a very powerful container and introduce specific practices that help people regulate their nervous system. So obviously, working in a program where you are involved in a container where tools are implemented and you are learning how to do the work of nervous system regulation. It's not going to happen just from being aware of it. You actually have to do the work. And that is why I highly recommend a program like my Energy Acquisition System, which is my 12-week program. One of the major pillars of that program is we go to work on regulating the nervous system, and you'll be surprised how much healing occurs simply from this one pillar of the Energy Acquisition System, which is regulating your nervous system. It requires effort, it requires consistency, and it requires intentionality. It doesn't just happen through awareness. And so, if you're interested in finding out more information about the Energy Acquisition System, you can look at the show notes right below this video. There'll be a link for you to schedule a consultation call. You can go to my website, you can hear some testimonials from folks that I've worked with in the past, and you can also schedule your consultation call to talk more about the situation that you're facing, and also whether or not the Energy Acquisition System program is a good fit for you. And we can be happy to talk to you more about that, okay? If anything in this video has jumped out at you, been insightful for you, love to hear from you. Please put that in the comment section. Talk about, are you familiar with the term emotional incest? Have you been affected by it? How has this shown up in your life? How have you seen it play out with others? We'd love to hear from you. If this video has spoken to you and helped you in any way, one of the easiest ways you can give back is by liking the video, subscribing to the channel. It helps get this video out to more people. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.